But yeah, I think in the session online, it's called Getting Granular, but it's all the same. We're looking at assessment. Honestly, after the lunch thing, this is like 60% maybe obsolete, depending on how they decide to roll stuff out, right? So bear with me. I wanted to update on the fly. My Google Slides, I'll put the link up there again, but if you've already opened it, that will be updated. As soon as I have access to the new stuff, I'm going to make changes, so bookmark it for yourself. And all my contact information is in here as well. I've been told not to move too far, but just a few things. I'm going to presume a couple ideas. First, you already know how to make and use quizzes, right? That's one component of this. If you don't know, you might feel a little bit underwater, but that's fine because you're all sitting next to people, so you can say, hey, how did he get to that spot? This is normally an hour-and-a-half session that I do, and they said you have 40 minutes. So I'm going to talk a little bit fast at points, but again, all of my notes are on the Google Slides, and I'll be adding to that after the fact based on questions that you guys asked today as well. And then second thing, so first of all, like functionally, you got to know how to use quizzes, right? Second, if you are interested in accurately measuring students, like you're in the right spot. If you don't care about how you measure your kids, we're not going to get along too well. So just fair warning, right? And I am not offended if you get up and walk out. All right, so like if you're one of the people who does not like to make people angry, like you don't like conflict, I'm not going to call you out if this is not your thing, right? Feel free to just like go to your second or third or fourth choice, whatever you want. Just that's one thing I always like to say at the start, so you're not just here grumpy that you came to the wrong session, right? We good? We're good. All right, here we go. Step one. In order to make this work, you have to have outcomes in your Canvas course, okay? And when I say outcome, I mean a standard. So who of us in the room are K-12? Yes. Who of us in the room are higher ed? Okay, wow. Okay, so that was like 2/3, 1/3. But that works out. So in K-12, right, we've got our state standards, real easy defined. Higher ed, I don't speak your language because I've only ever taught K-12, but I'm assuming you have some kind of professional standard that you are working for with your students. Essentially, these are benchmarks, right? So from my high school science perspective, a standard would be a student can explain the parts of a cell. And that's kind of a second side note. I've only taught science. I've taught science for 10 years. All of my examples are in a science classroom. So if you're history, English, or social studies, I'm sorry. Or if you're elementary, I'm even more sorry. So again, just like, sorry. In Canvas, they're in there by state. They also have Common Core state standards if you're one of the states that like adopted it and then stayed with it. I'm from Indiana, so they adopted it and then dropped out, and then they're like, maybe we'll do it again. And they wrote their own that are almost the same as Common Core, so our teachers still use them. Don't tell anyone. But they're in there. You can also have your IT department upload a CSV, so if you can get your AP standards. Any AP teachers in here? Right? I taught AP Bio last year. There's 153 AP Biology standards, so I wrote my IT department, said, here's a CSV file, boom, they're in. You can get NGSS, whatever they happen to be, but you have to get them into your course. So what does that look like? In Canvas, there's an Outcomes tab, right? Hit Find, and this is the magic of like technology, right? In your school install, this is something that you would set up at the start, not at the teacher level, but IT would do this. You would just go in, find your content, right? So we've got all the grades, all the sciences, and I can pick an entire course, right? Chem 1. Those are now going to be available to me as I am building my course, okay? You can also pick and choose. So maybe I want like this single chemistry standard, or I want this single history standard. Our district is moving towards cross-curricular implementation, so we've got teams of teachers, history, English, science, and math, who are building content around ideas and themes rather than this kind of stuff. So those teachers, a theme might be sustainability, right? So the science teacher would go in and find sustainability standards and pull them one at a time. The history teacher would find sustainability standards and pull them in one at a time into that common course that they're all teachers in. But that's how you would do it, all right? Second thing we do, once we get our content standards in there, and I'm sorry, I'm talking really fast, but I'm excited because this is so much fun. Question banks, right? So we're going to look at quizzes first. This is kind of like step one. We're all really good at assessing using tests. Like, let's just be honest and candid, right? I can write a test, boom, and assess my students, and I can do something with it, and great. I'm a teacher. I'm in high school. College, I took some serious tests in college, so I know you can do it too. In Canvas, so we got to change our thinking a little bit. Instead of building individual quizzes, start building question banks. And I'll talk about why in just a minute. The second thing you want to do in your question banks is you want to build them by common outcome or common standard. So instead of building a test on ecology, I would build a test on standard 2.2, right? Whatever standard 2.2 happened to be. Maybe it says, like, I can describe plant life in a pond, right? I would write questions that just tie back into plant life in a pond. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes means yes, I get it, or no means I have no idea what you're talking about. So, yes, feedback's important. There we go. Thank you. And I'm one of the people that I'll wait, like, I'll let it get awkward, right? So if I ask a question, nobody says anything, I'm going to wait. Then what we do, once you have your banks built out by outcome, you link the outcome to that question bank. So let's look at it in practice. So here, I'm in my Canvas quizzes, right? And to get to your question banks, hit the gear icon in the top right. It says Manage Question Banks, right? And so I've got questions built out. G2.2 was a graded standard. It was number 2.2, and you can see it's got 15 questions in there. Then I also have G2.2 test. Now I do that because I have general purpose items, and then I've got test-specific items. My general purpose I use to build random quizzes. For retakes, for multiple tries, if a kid's absent, whatever, I can build another quiz, boom, it's random. Some questions might be the same, but if I'm only picking 3 out of 15, chances are it's not going to be the same. It gives me a little bit of security. When I get to my chapter tests, we use common assessments in my district, right? So those G2.2 test items are specifically for the chapter test where I'm assessing standard 2.2. Does that make sense, the logic behind that? Yes? Okay, nods, good, thank you. Feedback, right? It's important. A couple other things. Labeling by standard is helpful. For me, it made sense to use that numerical structure just because of the way my course was organized. So because we're trying to get to that granular level, by standard, by outcome, what does my student know? Labeling this way allowed me to say that student A really gets standard 2.2, but they really suck with standard 2.3, right? And that's what goes through my mind when I'm assessing them, is like, they really need help with this, so I'm going to help them. But if I don't know what the question ties back to, I can't help them with that bigger piece. The same outcome can be linked to multiple banks, right? So even though these are the same number, that outcome can get attached to anything. I could attach 2.2 to 2.3 as well, and then it would totally screw up my system, so I'm not going to do that. But the outcomes are flexible. They can go wherever you want them to go. This is really literally just for naming the material. Okay? So first we import our outcomes into our Canvas courses at the course level. Then, once they're in there, I go in and I create my question banks. Now, here's how you link your outcomes. So now I'm inside of G2.2, the bank. I've got questions. They go through, multiple choice, whatever. Do whatever. You can import your questions from ExamViewer or whatever you're using. On the right side, you've got this Align Outcome button. When you click on Align Outcome, it pulls up our handy-dandy outcome finder that you already imported, right? So you see the screen. It looks really familiar. The rubric you can set. And then here's the other kind of like big decision point for you as the instructor. Down the line, I want to know where my students are in terms of mastery. How well do they know this bit of information? I want to move away from did they do the worksheet or did they pass the test to what do they know, right? So I set a mastery score of 60%. This number is completely arbitrary. It means nothing outside of my course context. I got to 60% because 50 felt a little too low. 75 one year I tried that, felt a little too high, so we landed on 60, and it all works out in the end. For a point, for like you data people, and I know all the higher ed people, and I may be making a generalization right now, but that's okay because we're all friends, and I'll get to your question in just 1 second. When I get to the end of my year, when we do our final exam, I had students for the most part get 60 to 70% of all content standards, right? So every standard we learned, they got about 70% of them. Their final exam score was within 5%, plus or minus. So if I hit a 65% on all of my standards cumulatively, I would score between a 60 and a 70% on the final exam, and I've had that for the last 3 years. So it's not academic, it's not research-based, but it seems to work for me, right? So again, that number is arbitrary. So let's go back to your question. Yeah?
So if, in theory, all of your assessment items are designed to show mastery, student mastery of that standard,
yes.
how does the percentage play into that? Because if I answer one of them correct, I've demonstrated mastery of the standard.
Yes.
If I answer 15 of them correct, I've also demonstrated mastery of the standard.
Okay, so the question was, if your assessment items are all aligned to show mastery of a standard, if I answer 1 correct versus 15 correct, where does the percentage come in? Like, why is that number important? So it looks at the number of items on your question, on your quiz. Right. So if I have 5 questions for 2.2 on a particular quiz, I have to get 3 out of the 5 right to get mastery marked on my standards in my Learning Mastery Gradebook.
But even if I answer 2 of them right, isn't that evidence that I have mastered the
Right, and so this is my judgment as a teacher, right? I'm saying mastery to me is if you can answer 6 out of my 10 questions, I say you've got the material. You may get, if you get less than 6, it doesn't mean anything. It just means you haven't met what I generally see as mastery. That's why this number is arbitrary. So you may be able to answer 1 out of 10 of my questions, right? In that one context, you've got it, but those other 9 times, you're not there yet, right? So I would not call you proficient in the standard as a whole. That's where this number comes in.
Are you using context provided by the standard, or those are, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so the follow-up question is, am I using context provided by the standard? In some cases, yes. In other cases, no. It depends on your depth of knowledge level, right? So if I'm looking at a knowledge level question, so throw up your Bloom's triangle, right? So if we're looking at our Bloom's level, can you name, like, what's the powerhouse of the cell? Yeah, thank you. There we go. Mitochondria, right? It's a science question. Sorry. Who was the guy who always put his hand in his jacket? History, here's your chance. There you go. Okay. So now you're included, right? We're inclusive. So that DOK gets to this standard, right? But I care more about DOK 1. I need to see them at a 4 as well. And so that's why I use this aggregate score to say, yes, you have it, or no, you don't, or no, we're still working on it. So bear with me for a minute. You're giving me a side eye, and that's fine.
I know, I want to talk to you later.
I love it.
Because I don't want to take up time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So we'll look at how this is approximated then in the Mastery Gradebook, because that's kind of like the end shebang, right? So I mentioned this before. It's based on the percentage a student gets correct on that particular item. So if it's quiz, they get 3 out of the 5 right. They're marked as a mastery on that assignment. They've reached it. If they don't, they're scaled above or below. If I got a 5 out of 5, I'd be marked as a 4, right? I would hit exceeds expectations. Meets expectations is your 60%, 3 out of 5. Anything lower than that, it scales down appropriately. Also, side note, I like a 4-point scale because it's very hard for me. I have to make a determination. They know it or they don't. It's too easy to say, yep, you're in the middle, 3, right? It makes you feel good, and your student's like, all right, cool, whatever, out of 3. So a 4-point scale works really, really well for you as the instructor because you have to decide, do they know it or do they not? And it gives that student a little bit of feedback like you're almost there, you're way above, or you're way below, and we need to have that conversation. Again, we're getting away from, did you do the assignment? Like, I don't care if you do the paperwork. I care if you learned it, right? And that's what we're getting at here. Okay, so we've got our outcomes in. We've aligned them to the question banks. Man, this is going really fast. Rubrics on assignments. So here's kind of the other piece. Quizzes are one thing, and I think in your case, right, we're looking at a quiz as a binary. Yes, you pass, or no, you fail. Which is helpful in some cases, but here's where rubrics kind of balance out that approach, right? So a rubric can be added to the assignment, and you can link outcomes onto your rubric. You can have as many as you want. So this is where the cross-curricular piece comes in. This is where process standards might come in. So if you've got reading or writing standards you need to include, and you all should be including them, we can find those outcomes, and then we can assess it in the speed grader or in the teacher app. So here's obsolete point number 1, right? Also, with the question bank thing, I think that's now obsolete as well with the new quizzing engine, but I got to take a look at that a little more deeply. So until that updates, you got to use the question bank method. So here is a typical assignment. You got your instructions. They've got the Google Doc, whatever they're doing. Give me a link when you're done, and I'll grade it. At the bottom, there's a little plus rubric button. This is not in the edit screen. This is in the published screen, right? So down in the bottom, there's that rubric button. And you can add that rubric. It essentially, oh, I missed a slide. It pulls up your outcome finder, just like in the outcome alignment in your question bank. So you just go through and you find this is standard 2.2, boom, grab it, and it drops it in. And then your rubric pops up in the speed grader for your students. So this is not a student. That's one of my colleagues, so don't worry. I'm not giving away information that I can't give. So this is one of our outcomes, B.5.1. It's attached to this assignment. I can score it 530. This was in her class. And then I can leave feedback and comments and all the other things that I want to. The great thing is when I go to my gradebook, those two standards are aligned differently. So I may have exceeds expectations for B5.1, but I do not meet expectations for B5.2. Those are split out. So now when I talk with my student about this assignment, right, you've really got your content down, but you got to work on these other things. It changes the conversation to their deficiencies and their skills, not so much did you do the assignment or did you not. Still with me? Yes, ma'am.
Is it possible to link the outcomes if you're using free-form comments in the rubric? Does it have to be?
Yeah, so the question was, can we link outcomes if we're using freeform comments? When you create your rubric, you still have this assignment comment down here, right, at the bottom, so I can give longer comments here. Mine are all exceeds, meets, or does not meet, just for my sanity. And then I give longer comments feedback down here in this portion of it.
So you don't know if they can do that?
I have not checked into it. We can check it before we leave, though. You can do that. Thank you. Audience participation. Saved. Oh, yeah, that's right. You've got this box there. Well, that's the score. And then you can hit the little comment button. Thank you. It was right in front of me. So there's a little comment button. Hit that, and you can leave comments about this particular standard. My habit, I just do it down here as I'm kind of brain dumping on what they need to do. Yeah. Good question. Other questions about Rubrics? Yeah.
How does this work with MasterPath? I mean, do you use that?
No, I haven't used MasterPaths yet because I'm not going to throw IT under the bus, but they haven't turned it on yet. So I need to look at that more, and that's my plan for next semester. Yeah. Has anyone used MasterPaths with Rubrics that can answer that question?
Yes, you can use it with that.
Okay, so I've heard yes, you can use it with MasterPaths. Is the functionality any different, or like the structure any different?
MasterPath works on a lot of modules, so it's just like any assignment.
Okay, so again, just to repeat for the recording, MasterPaths, it's on the module level, so at the assignment level, it stays the same. You'd still add your rubrics, and it wouldn't link them back. Okay? All right, now, here's where I get really excited, right? So I am praying, after they talked about their 6 mobile app strategy, right? So we've got the new Canvas Teacher app, which is great. They have this app called Magic Marker. Has anyone used Magic Marker? I'm about to blow your minds, right? And I don't say that lightly. I really am going to blow your minds. So the thing that I always struggle with, does anyone carry a clipboard in your classroom? All right, so if you don't carry a clipboard, every single semester, I get a clipboard and I print out a grid of all my students, and I keep track day to day of like what's going on. And I use it to track their standards, because I had this worked really, really well for formative assessments that happened to be online, or a test, or an essay, or whatever. I had no good way to assess them on the fly and link it back to those standards. I always had to do it hard copy and then sit down at my computer on a Friday night and after my wife went to bed and the kids were asleep, and I would just like plink numbers in, and it drove me crazy. And then I found Magic Marker. Are you ready for this? So Magic Marker, it links up with your course. I can pull standards in or outcomes in from my course. As I am talking with my students, I hope this works. There we go. If they answer that question, I give them a swipe up, and it adds a point to that outcome. If they get that question wrong, I swipe down on their picture in my group or in our small group discussion as we're going. So standard 2.2 is just assessed for the gentleman on the left and this young lady here, third from the left, right? If the whole group is talking and I see that they all give it, I can swipe up on the entire group, and boom, they've all been given a point, quote unquote, right? So yeah, so I see a lot of what? So I am like terrified that they're going to destroy this app as they work through their mobile strategy. So after we're done, I'm going to go and find Mitch and just like beg him not to get rid of this, and you all need to do the same. Yes, ma'am?
Can this only be used with groups, or can you do this with just like an individual student in an individual conversation?
Okay, so good question. So the question was, can I only use this with groups, or can I do it with individuals? You have to put students into a group, but I don't have to touch anyone I'm not assessing. So I might only be talking with this young, I almost said her name. I might be talking with her anytime, and I just pull her. I just know that she's in group 1 because they all kind of sat in the same area. So the groups are arbitrary. It maxes out at 8 students. I tried to put them all into one mega group, and that didn't work. But again, across the top, I can change, so that's at standard 2.2. I can also swipe over on the fly to another standard. There's another option. I have a laser pointer. Up here, you see a tiny little red dot, right? That's where you pull in your outcomes that are already in the class because it's linked to your Canvas account that you have set up already with steps 1, 2, and 3. Okay? Yeah, way in the back. Is it free? Yes. C. Okay? So this connected me from like here at my desk, take your test, do your essay, to like just in real life, as you are making mistakes and as you are learning, right, I can keep track of longitudinal data that all dumps back into that outcome. So it's no longer stakes-based, right, on that test or that quiz. Now it's just as we're going. So to get back to your question about rounding out, like where does that 60% come from? Maybe you just have severe test anxiety, right? And you're just struggling. But here, I can see that every time you ask or you answer a question, boom, boom, you're getting it right every time. I just override the grade, right? It doesn't matter because I know that you know what's going on. Yeah.
I presume it date stamps it somehow, or
Yeah.
documents?
Yeah.
It's
So.
not tied to an assignment.
No. So the question was, does it date stamp or anything? Yes. So the next piece I show you, it's tagged as magic marker and then the date. So you know roughly when you were talking with your students about whatever.
It appears in the gradebook or the mastery gradebook?
It shows up in the mastery gradebook as in your alignments portion, yeah. Other questions about this piece of it? Yeah.
Can you assign like a depth of knowledge with it? Because some of the questions, in my own documentation, I make sure that if it's a very difficult text or
Mhm.
difficult piece,
Mm-hmm.
I've got that noted.
Yeah.
If they're not getting it at that level of difficulty,
Sure.
that's why they're not getting it.
That's a great question. So the question was, can I tag a depth of knowledge on there so I know if they're struggling to hit DOK 3 and 4, but they can get DOK 1 and 2? I've got that data. Not within the item itself. I would just make a note on the assignment so my students see it. Like, this is a DOK 1 assignment, guys, and they can self-assess. And then as you're going through up and up, they can go back to their assignments. And then even in the data now, a student can go in and look at their grades, click on the assignment where they have a lower than normal grade, and they see it's a DOK 4, and they think, oh, yeah, Mr. Bennett, I need some help on these higher level questions. But that would be a great thing to include, and you should all tell your people in the Instructure shirts. Because I would love that too. Other questions? Okay, so that's kind of like the bones for everything, right? So we get our outcomes in, we tag them to question banks, you can add them into rubrics, you've got magic marker now. What does this really mean? You've got the mastery gradebook. Does everyone use this? All right, so you have to toggle this on in your course settings. So across the top, I've got all of my learning outcomes, and this is a live class, that's why all the names are blurred over here. I've got my learning outcomes. If you hover over an outcome, it tells you what it is. You don't have to memorize your numbers, because memorizing numbers is awful. It gives me the course average. So right across the bat, or right at the bat, I know that 2.2 is okay and 2.3 is okay. 2.6 is right there. And again, I'm not a machine, so 2.99 to me is akin to a 3, right? There's a great YouTube video, by the way. 0.99999 is equal to 1. Go find it. It'll blow your mind. I'm not going to say any more than that. But we're really struggling here with 2.5 and 2.8, right? So as an instructor, I have to go back and look at, in detail, what's going on. These students, right, this particular student, his case was he didn't turn anything in for those two. That's why he has 0s out of 3. Remember, the 3 was my cutoff at mastery. Okay? Anything above a 3 goes into that exceeds expectations range. A 3, totally arbitrary. 75% of the time, you get it right. Okay, you've got it. Like, you've got the idea. All right? So in your course, to turn this on, once you get all this done, you want to be able to use it, right? So in your course settings, so down here at the bottom, right, you would just turn on your mastery gradebook, student learning mastery gradebook, and that gives you the second tab in your normal gradebook. And you click on it, and those outcomes populate. So the magic marker assessments, boom, they pop up. When you hover over it, you get one of those little cards. It's got a graph of every time you've assessed it, where they fell. So one thing that's really interesting, like your pattern, right, what you would expect. First time you do anything, would you expect your students to be way high or way low? Way low, first experience, right? Second time, maybe a little bit higher. Third time, a little bit higher. Fourth time, a little bit higher. Like, we would love to see that nice graph. We never get the graph, but it's okay. But you get that feedback of maybe they score way high, then they score way low, then they're kind of in the middle, and they're bouncing around like a bumblebee, right? You have no idea why, but it opens up that conversation to so-and-so about, hey, like, tell me what you know about this, and I can quickly do a formative assessment and see where they're making mistakes, right? Maybe there was some impropriety that we need to deal with if it was on a quiz. Maybe they got lucky one day. Maybe they didn't eat that morning. Like, there's all kinds of things that play into this. But again, the whole idea is to get away from did you do the assignment to did you get the idea? How do we turn that into something actionable? Here's a picture of one of those cards. Hover over it. It gives you a little graph where we are. It gives you a thing. Tells me how it's calculating. All this stuff. You can get to the alignments from there. And again, it sounds like with some of the updates coming this fall that a lot of this is going to be streamlined. One of my new questions now, so this is at the course level. So if we teach two separate courses, our outcomes do not align, okay? So if you get into something where maybe you're taking Physics 1 and Physics 2 at the same time, we might have corresponding standards, But if they're doing really well in my class and not so well in another class, I don't know that unless the teachers are talking to each other, right? So with the new outcomes stuff that Mitch talked about, I would like to know if this is going to be institutional level. The other thing that I think is going to make a huge difference is with Gauge, do those outcomes that you tested at institution level, do they dump into your course level stuff? Right? So that's another big question, because at a granular level, for my student, if I can say that this person is mastered 3.5, but every time we take a standardized assessment, if they're pulling together, they don't get it, there's something we need to look at. And that's what actionable data means, right? So if you can set it up effectively in your classroom, and this took me 2 years to figure out, right? So I started off with just like quizzes all over the place, and I wasn't getting anything effective. So hopefully you can use this to restructure a little bit what you're doing. But again, like it sounds like they're moving more towards that actionable data model, which is really exciting. But keep those kinds of things in mind as you're going through the fall semester. I thought I saw a hand. Yeah.
Well, that decaying average, I don't know if that was exactly
Oh.
what you were talking about there, but
Yeah.
I really like that. How did you do that yourself? Or
No.
did
So decaying. So there's 4 presets. When you set up your outcome, you would see this if you go into your course later. And if you want, I'm not going to a session next hour because my brain is cooked, and I'm from Indiana, so like 900 feet, right? And now we're at 10,000 feet, so my brain's a little bit. Woo. Drink your water. There's 4 presets in there. One of them is just the highest score. Whatever their highest score is, that's what they get. Pros and cons to that. One is the mean, so it just averages everything. One of them takes the median, so what is their middle score? And then the decaying average is the 4th one. I like this because it puts the most weight on the most recent test, or most recent item. So hopefully the idea being that they are more familiar with it at that point, or they are the most familiar with it at that point, so it weighs a little bit more than the others.
Could you adjust that percentage?
No,
like
I can't.
65, 30, so that's 65, 30,
This is set up at the institutional level. And because I was just playing with it, IT didn't change it for me. But I think at the admin level, I'm not a Canvas admin, but I think at that level, yeah, you could change your average to whatever you wanted it to be. Yes, ma'am. Yes, correct. To clarify, at this point, until Quizzes Next is released en masse, outcomes are attached at the bank level. Now, what they showed today downstairs makes that obsolete. Because it looks like you can just do it at the question level, which makes my life way easier in one sense, because if I forget, I can just go to the quiz and add the thing. I like the bank level because now I've got a repository of questions that I can use anywhere, right? And the nice thing about question banks, too, is you can share them with each other. So who's here with a team of people and you guys teach the same thing, right? So if you set up Chapter 1 bank questions and Chapter 2 bank questions, Chapter 3, just share them with each other. Don't recreate your work. So there's pros and cons to both of those. Good question. Other questions? Yes, sir, in the back.
What's through the parent app or parent access can they see? Like, can they hover and see that little graph?
Okay, so the question was, what level of access do parents have? They can see their students' progress, the learning mastery progress. They do not see the course progress. So it's limited because the parent, if you have a parent in there, they're actually attached to their student's account. So all they have access to, and they're actually, if you go into your people and your Canvas, they're called a viewer. So they only see their students' data. Yes, ma'am.
Do you find that your students are interested in this data and in seeing their progress?
Yeah, so the question was, are my students interested in the data? Yes, because, and I'm not going to dive into it now because we're down to less than 10 minutes and I want to answer questions as much as we can about just the structure, but I use standards-based grading in my classrooms. Who's familiar with standards-based grading? Okay, so essentially my gradebook, I use this learning mastery to look at the content. Once they hit a mastery, I have a corresponding assignment in the proper gradebook that goes to our student information system. Once they get that assignment or that standard, it switches to a 1 out of 1. If they don't have that after a certain date, it's a 0 out of 1. At any point, a student can reassess and flip it to a 1, right? It's a binary. You know it or you don't. Here's your granular, like, nuanced information. That 1 or a 0 is just to really get a letter grade out because that's what I have to do. So your students really like this, and I give them like a 2.9. They know what they're talking about. I'm not going to give them a 0 on a 2.9, but if there's a student, like here, this one, right? They're really struggling with this. So in their grade, it's reported as a 0 because they don't have this idea yet. When we're talking about the idea, I say, all right, 3.7, here we are. Let's look at what assignments you've done. Oh, you're missing 3. Let's go back and look at these. Or here, you struggle on the quizzes. Let's take some other route. It opens up that conversation. How can you show me what you know? Because that's what I care about. Other questions?
Would you mind putting the
Yeah. So my slides, again, are right here. So it's that slideshow. Again, I'm going to update this like today. We're done really early because maybe I'm just the best communicator ever, and you have no questions, right? So tell all your friends. But I'll hang out up here for a few minutes. I'll hang out afterwards for a few minutes if you want to. I'd love to meet some of you and talk with you guys what you're doing. Let me throw my contact information up there real fast. I'll come back to the slides, I promise. There's my contact information. I am on Twitter, at Bennett Science. And then this email goes to my entire team, not just me, but the entire team is versed in how to set this up. So if I'm not available to answer, either Wes or Kat can answer your questions as well. Feel free to email us with your questions. Say, hey, I saw this in InstructureCon. I would love some more ideas or more help. Thank you all very much. Have a good rest of your day.